The woman couldn't believe her eyes. Her son, who has multiple sclerosis, was watching people playing chess quietly. In order to verify her guess, she drew an old man with 100 pieces of chess. No matter what, she had to ask him to teach her son the next game. Originally, she just wanted to see how long her son could concentrate. Unexpectedly, the son who played chess for the first time only took 4 steps, and forced the old man into a dead end. The woman was surprised. Is the son a genius? She eagerly wanted to see the result. But the old man not only refused to fall, but also hurriedly drove them out. At first, the woman thought it was inexplicable. But later, the more she thought about it, the happier she was. Could it be that her son was treated as a master of half a pig eating a tiger? So when she came home, she was eager to set up a chess game and let her husband and son play another game. But when her husband heard about the park, he was afraid. When he saw that his son was still shaking like before, he felt that his wife must be exaggerating. However, when he was a child, he couldn't laugh anymore. He was not only defeated, but also only replaced his son with a soldier. What's more, his son and half-sister were busy playing chess while taking a bath. Such a terrible talent is enough to make any parent go crazy. But George's reaction was strange. The next day, he was ordered to take his son to the chess club to sign up. But after looking around aimlessly, he chose to give up for some reason. Before leaving, he saw his son playing chess with someone in the hall. As a result, his opponent, Big Beard, was defeated. He took advantage of his son's strength. But George hesitated again and again and chose to leave. After that, he took his son to the park to play chess every day. His son not only played happily, but also made some friends. He thought it was good. Until that day, the famous chess master Bruce took the initiative to find him. He just found out that the Big Beard he defeated that day was not an unknown person, but a top master. Bruce would rather pay half the fee to take his son as a disciple. George still refused. It turns out that he has cultivated his son's hobby countless times over the years. It's all because of his son's lack of concentration, so he didn't want to toss it anymore. But Bruce still didn't give up. He asked George to come home and play a little game with his son for a day. Then he told George very firmly that his son didn't have multiple sclerosis, but his brain reacted too quickly, which led to a lack of patience. Give him to me to cultivate. I will definitely give you back a chess god respected by millions of people. After hearing this, George could no longer remain calm. When the time came, he decided to pay the tuition and started his own path of learning. But the word learning and learning are very contradictory. A month later, George took his son to the youth competition. As soon as he arrived at the hotel where he stayed, his parents came to compare and ask his son how many levels of chess he was. But George hadn't adapted to the change brought by his son. When he saw the number on the wall, he instinctively lied to cope with it. It was already level 15. After the other party was stunned, he immediately showed a look of a fool. It turned out that there was no such level in the chess circle. So until the next day before the game, the man met George and he couldn't help but laugh. But George could only pretend to be calm and listen to the referee's rules carefully. Before the game started, it was revealed that the organizer didn't care about the children who were dancing. Instead, he kept lecturing the quiet parents and warned them not to shout loudly, not to mock each other, and not to stare at each other. At first, George thought it was inexplicable. But at the beginning of the game, while his son and his opponent were fighting fiercely, he secretly aimed at the opposite parent and found that the other party was really staring at him. Just when he didn't know how to deal with it, the two parents in the distance actually fought. The reason was that one of them got a brain injury, and the other party thought he was playing a secret signal. As a result, all the parents were involved and were kicked out of the game. The children were brave and funny and happily applauded. On the contrary, the parents of Wangzi and Chenglong were locked together. The atmosphere was strange to the extreme. Some people were anxiously walking back and forth. Some people were trembling and praying to God. George, who has always been a Buddhist, was gradually influenced by emotions and kept staring at the rankings on the wall. Later, his son passed the exhibition and became unstoppable. Then his parents kept finding themselves. On the surface, they were chatting. In fact, they were inquiring about the military situation. And this finally aroused his ambition. In the final, his son and his opponent fought fiercely. The game between George and his opponent's parents was even more exciting. In every next move in the game, someone would come over to report. George was disappointed when Xiao Shi was eaten by a small soldier. At this time, his opponent's parents took the initiative to comfort him. Don't worry, your son will get out of trouble. In the end, they also hit George's shoulder. However, not long after, his son ate the opponent's bow. George just wanted to laugh and was in a hurry to adjust his expression. Then he comforted his opponent sincerely. "It's okay, your son must be setting up." In the end, they also hit each other's shoulders. But after turning around, there was a domineering aura on his face. This domineering aura lasted a long time. Until the train back to the city, he looked like a stranger. But when his son fell asleep, he secretly finished the champion trophy and finally couldn't help but laugh. Later, he took his son everywhere to participate in the game. He held up all the pride as a father with this trophy. Gradually, he got used to the media interview. He also began to enjoy the envy and helplessness. However, at the parent meeting of the school that day, the teacher poured a basin of cold water. He said that frequent leave would not only delay his son's studies, but also make him gradually unable to integrate into the class. Although he said it very politely, George still felt the doubt. He, who has always been gentle and elegant, rarely got angry. "I know how to train my child. He is less than 8 years old, but he has surpassed all my achievements in half my life. Do you know how ridiculous your question is? My son is better than any one of you." That night, George discussed with his son about transferring to another school. The new school is not only better, but also specializes in chess lessons. But his son's eyes were blind. He could barely say a word. One day, his son suddenly asked him, what would happen if he lost? George, who used to be a Buddhist, always said that victory and defeat are common. But now, he said to his son without a doubt, "You won't lose. Your opponents are all looking forward to it." On the second day of the game, George waited for his son's good news as usual. 10 minutes later, his son came out. In the first round, he gave up and lost to his opponent. And Jingjing walked 7 steps in a row. George couldn't accept it. He made his son reflect deeply in the heavy rain, but he didn't find that his son's eyes were no longer bright. After that, his son began to lose repeatedly like a curse. George was very upset and disappointed. But he didn't know that his son's struggle and entanglement were no less than his father's. The first time he saw someone playing chess in the park, George fell in love with this sport. That kind of fast-paced thinking suits his taste very well. But he didn't like the feeling of winning or losing. Because there are a lot of players playing chess there, the loser always has a sad face. So when he was playing chess with his father, he deliberately directed the blind chess from a distance. Just to avoid his father's expression when he was losing. After winning a big pot in the chess club, when he saw his soul was broken, he hurried to send his candy as compensation. But later, he was taken to another park by his father. He found that there could be laughter and laughter between the winning and losing. He had a lot of fun here. One day, Bruce suddenly broke into his life and opened up a new world for him. On the first day of chess class, Bruce set up a game, but he didn't wait for George to think. He swept all the pieces of chess on the ground and let George push them against the air plate. George thought it was very interesting. In less than 20 seconds, he gave the correct answer. Bruce was very happy. As a reward, he carefully took out a piece of paper from his bag. This action made George think that it must be a priceless treasure. Bruce said, "This is a certificate of a chess master. There are only a few of them in the world. And behind each one is a story that excites people." Because George did a great job just now, Bruce added 10 points to him in the book. When the total score reached 2,000 points, I sent the certificate to you. Seeing George's desire for this honor, Bruce immediately took the certificate back. He was also very sad to give up his friendship. After that, whenever George couldn't sit still, Bruce would use the certificate to motivate him. Gradually, the reason for George's chess became the certificate. Later, George killed 4 people on the field. The first time he saw his father proud of himself. From then on, there was another reason for his chess. Until one day, his father had a big quarrel with his teacher at school. When he came home, he wanted to transfer to another school. George was reluctant at first. He didn't want to be separated from his teacher and classmates. But his father said to the crowd, "You are a genius. You are destined to go a different way from them." That night, George accepted the weight of being called a genius. However, just one day later, George saw another genius boy in the park. He was so strong that he was scary. George couldn't even figure out how he walked. And he was young but very old. He could not only kill opponents on the chessboard, but also kill people outside the chessboard. At this moment, George realized that he was not the only genius. At night, the boy came to the chess club under the leadership of a man. This man was a dead enemy of Bruce. George began to be arrogant. He said that he had found the next chess god. George not only had a stronger talent, but also had the domineering spirit like a chess god to despise all opponents. In every aspect, George was mercilessly suppressed. And tomorrow, They will meet at the game. George was not afraid of losing the game, but he was afraid that his father would be disappointed. So he worried and asked his father, what would happen if he lost? However, at this moment, his father could not accept his son's failure. You won't lose. Your opponents are afraid of you. As his father said, in the next day's game, he found that when his opponent saw him, he was afraid of swallowing saliva. And when he turned his head, he happened to encounter George's sharp eyes. Suddenly, he also felt that kind of fear. Because he dared not meet George in the final, he was in a mess. In the first round, he was embarrassed and out of the game. Unexpectedly, this small failure directly knocked him into hell from heaven. His father's unchanging tenderness made him reflect on himself in the rain. And Bruce suddenly became picky. He took George's harmless personality as his original sin. He asked him to show the murderous spirit like George. He asked him to hate his opponent and despise his opponent. But kind George couldn't do it at all. Later, even George's preference to play speed chess in the park became a mistake. Bruce didn't allow him to go to the park to get in touch with those messy moves. He only allowed him to play chess and play chess at home. He gave the correct answer to each move. Only allowed to learn, not allowed to doubt. Suddenly, playing chess became a very painful thing. And every time George felt tired, Bruce used deducting points as a punishment. Originally, the carrot that attracted the toad to pull the ink turned into a knife that forced the toad to move forward. It also became a shackle to suppress the love in his heart. George became depressed all day. Every time he passed the park, he couldn't help but look at it. That's where his passion began. His son's unhappiness was seen by his careful mother. But I don't know what's wrong. Until this day, Bruce used deducting points as usual to threaten. George suddenly got tired of this game of toad chasing carrots. He asked to get the certificate first. Otherwise, he wouldn't play chess. Bruce was ridiculed. He said, you play chess for this certificate. That's good. Then he quickly took out the certificate and took a picture in front of George. But when George just received the certificate, he took another picture. Then the second one, the third one. It turns out that these are all meaningless copies. How much do you want? I'll give you as much as you want. George was stunned. The carrot turned into a big pie. One by one, it seemed to stick on his face. At this time, his mother came to the door. I just saw this scene. He was very angry. Immediately let Bruce roll out. He wanted to protect his son. But after his husband found out, he had a big fight with him. His anger at his protection would only make George weaker. His mother was aggrieved and trembling. Can't you see it? George is not weak, but too kind. He was never afraid of losing. He's afraid of losing now, not afraid of losing your love. Isn't it? Look at what you've become now. What has he become? Is this really what you want? George heard the quarrels of his parents. He couldn't sleep for a long time. His father thought all night. What the hell is he chasing? The next day, he wanted to talk to his son. He found that George was working hard on the chessboard. Even the messy room was cleaned up. This kind of change was what he had been looking forward to. But now he can't be happy at all. He carefully told George, you don't have to do that. I won't force you to do something you don't like. I didn't expect George to suddenly become sensible. Say I already understand. My hard work is all for myself. However, his father was not happy about it. Because he carefully found that George's eyes were heavy. Can't see a trace of happiness and love. Later, his father, regardless of Bruce's opposition, brought George to the park. After all, this is where his love began. As long as it makes his son happy, everything will go with him. In addition, he also strictly controls the time when George plays chess. Sometimes he takes him to play baseball and cheers with his peers. Sometimes he goes fishing by the sea and leaves a moment of joy. Bruce was very dissatisfied with his father's approach. He said that this would make George bored. If you want your child to be successful, you have to work hard to train him. However, his father said in a mysterious way, you should go and see what George is like now. So Bruce sneaked into the park. He saw that George was not only more enthusiastic about chess than ever, but also growing at a very exaggerated speed. Not long after, George participated in the game again. This game is much bigger than ever. It gathers the top genius players in the country. After the players arrived, George appeared. This is to avoid the treatment of the champion. The champion's throne can overlook the whole game. He stared at George and solved the opponent slowly and carefully. And George rushed to the next round, and won the right to challenge the champion. However, before the final, George was in a daze in the lounge. He knew clearly that there was still a gap between him and George. This is an unexpected person. It was Bruce. He asked George if he was afraid again. George said yes. I know I can't beat him. Bruce wanted to encourage a few words, but the words still became indeed, I don't think you can win. George was more afraid after hearing it. But then, Bruce laughed. He took out a beautiful certificate. It said George is a master in his teacher's heart. No matter what happens, you are my best student. Name Bruce, who will always be proud of you. He can't say warm words seriously. He can only encourage his students in this way. He knew that George needed this certificate to unlock the last lock in his heart, to let the original passion put on the wings of freedom again. The change of people's hearts is always so wonderful. When George entered the arena, he found that George's sharp eyes could no longer hurt himself. But George always has a way to stir the opponent's nerves. This is an eye-catching game. But when the game started, George, who should have fallen, didn't move. He just stared at George coldly. Time passed by. When he finally couldn't hold his breath, George suddenly fell and made a sharp attack. George was really disturbed. After a few steps, he was forced into a dilemma. Through the live broadcast of the TV, Bruce saw the opponent's layout. He said that he had taught George the solution. But after George thought for a long time, he still made different choices. As expected, he was soon eaten by an important chess piece. Bruce forgot and couldn't bear to look at the next situation. However, the careful mother found that there seemed to be a trace of cunningness. The hesitation on his face and the hesitation when he was weak made George think he was winning. But all of a sudden, George beat him. George fell into the trap and had to give up. Since then, he has never dared to despise George again. And there is indeed a gap in the strength of the two. After a while, George was forced into a dilemma again. After all, this is a classic game. No one can break it so far. George looked at the chessboard. It seems that no matter what, the result is a dead end. But all of a sudden, he remembered the way the teacher taught. Then he quietly laid down on the table. At this time, the chessboard became empty. But different ways of walking are rapidly running in his mind. 10 steps, 20 steps, 30 steps, 40 steps. In the end, he looked at a grid on the chessboard. His eyes lit up instantly. The next two people fell very quickly. After all, they have been pushed through their minds countless times. Every step is so familiar. But all of a sudden, George made a move he had never seen before. In this way, George miraculously won. And this creative reversal also completely changed Bruce's teaching method. Under his guidance, George finally became a generation of chess gods. Pressure is like a poison. Although it can squeeze out the instinct of survival in a short time, it will inevitably create endless emptiness in the future. But what can lead us further must be the desire and enthusiasm of the heart.